Tom, instead of the Second Amendment, today we'll talk a little bit about the Fourth Amendment, and we've got some questions, so I wanted to bring them right to you. If you have your insurance card, your insurance information on your phone, and you show the police officer your phone, have you now opened that door and they get to look at everything on your phone? Or can you limit the scope of that search and say, no, you only get to see the insurance information that's here on my phone? And this is something that, I don't know why this topic is coming up, but that's been questions that we've been getting from readers and viewers asking about, hey, wait a minute, can we stop the cops from looking at my stuff?
So the answer is it depends. But I'm going to generally say that yes, you will have an argument in court for excluding evidence by virtue of the fact that you limited your search by making it clear to the officer, now, I don't know if you're handing them your phone or what you're doing, but if you make it clear that, hey, I'm only giving this to you or showing this to you for purposes of insurance identification requirements or something like that. Because obviously when you're driving a car, most, if not every state is some sort of, you have to have registration and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and proof of insurance. And I keep mine on my phone. I take a picture of my card when it comes in the mail so that I don't lose it. It's right there on my phone. I can flip it open. If I were to ever get pulled over, I never violate traffic laws. Never. But at that point, like here you go. Here, my State Farm card. Take a look at that, and then the cop says, no, I want to see all the rest. I get everything else on your phone because you showed me this.
So I mentioned that it kind of depends. Let me walk you through one, and I want to be upfront that this is an obscure scenario, but it's what leapt into my mind when you asked the question because I have seen this scenario play out. That was a situation where the cops were actually interested in someone, and he had a type of phone that at the time, they didn't know how to crack and break into. They couldn't make, they got machines, they just plug in and they can rip your whole phone, right? And at the time, it didn't really work for that particular phone and that particular brand. So they were really interested to preserve evidence to get his phone, but in an unlocked state. And they had a pretty clever way of doing it where they called him from a number that he didn't know. He answered, and then there was an undercover officer that immediately grabbed his phone and made sure that the screen didn't go dark. And
Wow.
This was an interesting snatch and grab operation. So that's probably not your ordinary person who's getting that level of police attention thanks to a traffic stop, right?
Right.
So, but that goes back to the point of, look, practically speaking, the answer should be that you can exclude evidence on the back end if you are sufficiently upfront with what's the limit of your waiver of your rights by showing them the device. Now, the reason why I said exclusion is because, look, at the end of the day, if the cop's going to take your phone and start swiping through your pictures and opening up emails and all that kind of stuff, I don't want you to get up and tackle the cop, right?
No.
Don't do that.
Yeah, we're looking at then resisting or assaulting an officer or something like that. Elevates the problem.
Yes, your problems got worse if you do that, right? So in the event that you are charged with some sort of crime, you could look at some sort of what we call exclusion of evidence. So in other words, the officer obtained this by way of violating your constitutional rights because you gave them a limited scope to only search this, and next thing you know, they're scanning through your social media, your pictures, and all this other kind of stuff, and you stood there in your car patiently for 2 hours until they found something illegal that they could arrest you on, and that's what they went ahead and did, right? So in that particular case, yes, your defense attorney should have, I think, more than a decent argument on many different levels, one being the limit of the search, another one being the unreasonable nature of the search at that point. Another could be the de facto detainer that was created because, in my hypothetical example, it took 2 hours to do that. Not an ordinary reasonable part of a traffic stop, right? So that could be 3 reasons, just off the top of my head, for getting that excluded in the confines of a criminal case. But what happens if they don't find anything? What happens if they sit there, you're sitting there for minutes, maybe even hours, in an extreme hypothetical example, and they find nothing and they just hand it back to you and say, all right, have a good day? What are you supposed to do?
Yeah.
So one important thing to know is that if you are even going to be open to contemplating any kind of civil action against a level of government, right? Because law enforcement has qualified immunity, so it's very difficult to go after the individual law enforcement officer for most types of acts of misconduct they performed while part of an official duty, right? There may still be ways to go after the department, the municipality, the county, the village, all that kind of stuff. But the big thing I want to tell people is that you often have very difficult, fast, and tight timelines and things that you need to do, certain hoops that you need to jump through, even if you ultimately never sue, just to bookmark your right to sue. Because at the end of the day, when it comes to suing the government, who do you think makes the rules on how you sue the government?
It's the government.
It's the government.
Yeah.
Do you think they're going to make them easy, lax? Yeah, just fill out this form, come back 10 years, whatever whatever you want, right? No, of course not. So whereas in normal civil law, you're dealing with what's called statutes of limitation. In other words, how long do you have to file a lawsuit to act on a grievance, to act on an incident that occurred? You may have in ordinary civil law, depending upon what the particular cause of action is, what the specific issue that you're suing on, 2 years might be a little tight, but often 3 to 5 years, right? Very common statutes of limitation. In criminal law, we often see 3 years for misdemeanors. We often see 6 years for felonies. This varies from state to state. Some felonies, some sorts of crimes have no statute of limitations, typically homicide. Other sorts of offenses like white-collar crimes, the statute of limitations does not start when the person committed the breach or stopped committing the breach if they ever stopped. It typically starts when it's discovered, right?
Okay.
So it could be discovered well down the line, right? So we're not going to reward people for doing a great job of burying their crime in a vault of paperwork in essence, right? So at any rate though, you get all these different statutes of limitation. Statute of limitation, for instance, for suing some states is 120 days for you to reserve and bookmark your right so that you can come back later.
You have to make your announcement.
You have to file a notice of claims against all the appropriate levels of government and bodies that you might be interested in suing to put them on notice. And the public policy reason for this is that, well, how is the government supposed to be able to defend themselves? Because from some employee that theoretically did X on Y date, unless you have a tight timeline to notify us, you don't have to get an attorney and sue us. You just have to put us on notice so that we can at least go out and talk to different people and figure out who is working, who is around, so we can mount a defense and gather our own evidence and conduct our own investigation. So that's the explanation. But of course, you could say the exact same thing about a corporation, about Walmart, about McDonald's. If you're interested in suing them, someone could sue Walmart 3 years down the line for a slip and fall or something like that. Odds are they won't. Odds are they'll do that pretty dang
right
quick,
away.
Right? But you get the idea that government creates their rules. They give themselves special powers. They also cap damages. It's not uncommon in many states that there is such a specific rule book that is so different from like a car accident or something like that. It is so unique and different and special, and the cap damages and all this other kind of stuff, that all the guys you see advertising on TV or on the radio, for those of us who are old enough to see commercials on TV, we remember those, right? And odds are almost none of those guys sue the government. You probably have to find a really special type of attorney who's willing to jump through all those hoops, jump through all the barriers and the fences that the government will put out there to make it hard to sue them, and then they limit the payoff so it's very small. And again, there's exceptions, loopholes, everything. Can you go into federal court to avoid state rules? Yeah, it's a very long conversation, but I know people out there, if they're asking this question, the question puts us on the road that leads to this explanation. So hopefully they got something out of that.
It becomes larger and more convoluted. It is, from my perspective, when I was just working patrol and somebody, I would be looking for things that were in plain view or things that were specifically in the lunge area to make sure of that. Anything else, I'm calling back in and saying, do I need a search warrant before I can go look for some of this other stuff if I thought there was something else going on? I mean, if you're holding up your phone and, yeah, here's my insurance information, don't have your contact list open with the words weed dealer on it right there. That's weird. What's that? I'm probably still going to need to get a search warrant. Now this guy has a weed dealer. I wonder if there's weed in the car. That's outside the scope of my traffic stop at that point, unless I see something that really indicates maybe a crime is being committed.
Well, what happens if while they're showing you their phone, a text message shows up on the screen says, "Hey, where's my weed? You're 5 minutes late."
Right. Now you're the weed dealer.
Now, wait a second here. All
That's
right.
weird.
This is strange. I have
Yeah.
your driver's license. It doesn't say weed dealer on it. Like,
So,
what does he mean by this?
And
Can
then-
you talk me through that?
Then I would ask the question, are there any drugs in the car? And see if I could get a canine there very quickly, because no, there's never any drugs in the car. There's never any weapons in the car.
Sometimes, but rarely.
Well, no one ever says, oh yeah, I got, 2 pounds in the trunk. No,
Pretty rarely.
Yeah.
Not when you get to the 2 pounds level.
It's
They're going
usually-
to let that ride.
Yeah, it's usually the dog who's like, telling me there's 2 pounds in the trunk. But so back to the original portion of this. Yes.
For the non-drug dealers in the audience.
For things that aren't going wildly out of control, for
Okay.
the average American who's getting pulled over on a traffic stop, and you hold up your insurance information on your phone, you are basically not giving police officers the right to search that entire phone.
If you're just holding it up, and if I would not let the officer take it. If this is a concern of yours, I would not let them take it. And if they do snatch it, I would make it very immediate, prompt, respectful, but clear about the fact you're not giving them consent to search, to swipe, to do anything, not to answer a phone call, respond to a text message, nothing other than look at that.
All you get to do is see that on there. And yeah, it might still be a headache, but you're protected. So
I mean, look, if you are this level of concerned, couple options. One is have the original or printed copy somewhere in your car so you don't have to open and show your phone. And I'm not saying that facetiously.
no, just have the card there.
Right,
Here's my card.
if you have this level of concern or if you're hearing stories that cops are doing this, that's a very easy response right there. Second potential option, and one that will be an interesting conversation starter, though not necessarily one I recommend, is make it your lock screen or something like that. Interesting conversation starter, having your insurance information right there.
It's
Maybe
right
a
there.
cop, right? But, right, I mean,
I get pulled over so often, I have to have it on my lock screen.
yeah, well, someone out there right now, I'm sure, is driving like a Ram 2500 pickup truck who does get pulled over all the time. And, it's not their fault that people want to walk on sidewalks, they shouldn't have paved it if they didn't want that guy driving there, right?
You're gonna get comments about this. Why are you picking on the Ram guys?
Okay, 2 things. Number one, one of my best friends drives a Ram 2500 pickup truck. So he's the one that makes those jokes about if people don't want to get hit by me, they shouldn't be walking on the sidewalk, right?
Okay.
So that's his joke I'm going up. Number 2 is I had a Ram once upon a time. So before my legion of kids arrived, couple sets of twins, and it's like, that knocked that
Next
out.
thing you know, you're not driving the pickup truck
right.
anymore.
Next thing I know, I'm definitely not driving a pickup truck.
Well, this was an interesting conversation, Tom. Thank you very much for your insights, as always. And I'm sure we'll get lots of good comments on this, and we'll probably have to answer more questions. But thank you for your insight.
I hope we offended enough people, and I look forward to reading the comments.
Outstanding. Hey, before you go, let me ask you, are you breaking these gun laws without even knowing it? Get a free concealed carry map that reveals the gun laws in your state and the states you might be traveling to. Click the link in the description below to check it out.